Good morning. Let's see, how many folks do we have here? We've got 8 of you here already. Sweet. We'll go ahead and let's give it just 1 or 2 more minutes. Let a few more folks filter in. Yeah. Elton, one thing I'll let you know, I was using your name in vain the other day. I'm using you as an example of someone who takes care of incident reports with great detail. Okay.
Sean, you said using my name in vain. What again?
I said I used your name in vain a little bit, or maybe your ears were burning because I was in training using an example of incident that had been taken care of with great detail, and used an example of a case that you took care of.
Okay. Thank you. I know the importance.
Absolutely. Okay, well, there's 10 of us here, so I'm going to go ahead and start trying to respect everyone's time. I hope you all are doing well this Friday. We'll go ahead and jump on into it. And again, I'm going to mute you just to eliminate some background noise. Please do feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. And of course, as previously, I'll pop in and out and unmute you all when I want to get feedback. Okay, so I want to talk. Today is a day where we're going to wrap this up. We're going to talk about a few things. Some of it may feel repetitive, but I'm repeating it because it's important. Okay, so again, let's talk about who your customer is. And for those of you who have projects ready to go, I would like to know, I'm going to unmute y'all actually for this because I do want this to be a bit of a conversation. For those of you who have a project in mind, even if you're debating still between a couple of different projects, I'd like to hear who your potential customers are for the project, for the purposes of the project.
Well, on mine, my customers are my coworkers in my office and also the clients and the employees because I do admin.
Mm-hmm. And that's perfect. Okay, so again, it's understanding who your customer is, really doing that, and involving them in your project. You need to involve your customer in your project. Again, like I talked, was it yesterday, about voice of the customer. You need to know what's important to them when you're working your project, because it's very easy to go through and do all these different things, shine and shine the tires and all those, buff the bumpers and all of that, when that's not necessarily what was really driving. The customer may say that's great, but really what I wanted was, wanted to fix my engine or whatever the case may be. All right, and talk really briefly about the numbers. By the numbers are important. You can't get away from it. And again, it goes back to measuring. Make sure you know what you're measuring. Make sure what you're measuring really is a true indicator of the issue that you're trying to resolve, improve, whatever that may be. So understand your numbers, make sure what you're measuring. And again, you're measuring the current state, what's going on today, as well as once you've made your improvements, you're going to measure again, right? So you've got to have front end, back end measuring, as well as a part of that whole control piece. You need to be sure that you've got controls in place so that you can audit, check whatever that may be on a regular basis. And the frequency with which you do those audits or checks really is up to you and your customer, your stakeholders, as to what seems viable for you. It may be weekly, it may be monthly, maybe yearly. So again, that depends. And it may not be you necessarily doing those audits. That's also part of the project, right? It's deciding who owns the project. You may be the owner, but someone else really may be the owner, and it may be you're fixing something that's a bigger thing. A lot of people are involved. Your customers, your champion, your stakeholders, you all collectively may decide, well, I made the improvements. However, I'm not going to be the one who audits and does this. We will have someone else who can do these audits, and then you need to make sure that's very clear who's performing any checks, who's responsible for the controls. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be you. All right. And again, just talked about that, what to measure. Make sure you've got you understand your data, whether it's people walking, you're measuring people walking through the doors. How are we handling them? Are we taking care of I-9s? Whatever your project may be, understand. And for some things it's very clear cut. Some things it's more of a feeling, right? And I apologize, I've talked to a lot of you recently about projects. When you've got projects, that make sure that whatever you're measuring, you can actually quantify. It's not a feeling, it's an actual something that you can say, this happened, it didn't happen, or it was at a 5 and now we're at a 10, or whatever that may be. All right, and I'm gonna skip through this, and again, reminding you all again that Six Sigma, you don't have to measure your Sigma level, but you certainly need to be aware of what that is, because again, this is Lean Six Sigma, right? Sigma level is 3.4 million defects per opportunity, or 3.4 defects per million opportunities, excuse me. And I'm gonna unmute y'all because I'm gonna ask a question. Can someone remind me what a defect is?
Something that's not working.
Base.
Right. Basically, that's exactly right, right? We don't have to get super complicated. Whatever's not working in your world, in that process, it's not functioning correctly, then yeah, that's considered a defect. And then again, I realize I sound a bit like a broken record, but it's important to make your data meaningful. And what I mean by that is, sorry, I've got to mute somebody because I can still hear somebody. Okay, sorry about that. Make your data meaningful. In other words, make sure what you're measuring really means something for the process. And because quite frankly, and I've used the example before, if any of y'all been in hotels or wherever and seen the USA Today newspaper, and I'll be honest, I don't know if they still exist, but how they're really bright graphics, they've got charts all the time, and the pie charts or whatever it is, and 40% of Americans think, you know, chocolate milk is great, or whatever the chart is, and all of these different things that they've going on. Well, it's really great, it's really bright and all that, but I'll be honest, if you push me between two positions, I can come up with charts that can make you think either position's correct. And that's really easy to do when all you're measuring is feelings. But if you're measuring data, the data is the data, right? Really hard numbers, and then it becomes much more solid. And again, when you're working with your supervisor, your manager, the division director, whomever, Kyle, you know, whomever, Dave, me, whoever, and you walk in and say, it feels like we should be changing X, Y, Z, as opposed to, we need to change this, and let me tell you why. These are the numbers. We were at this, or this. It's so much more of a solid argument. And again, you want to come in with your, by pulling these numbers, and by pulling the numbers, using some of the different tools we've talked about. And then when I work with you each individually too, we can talk about maybe a few additional tools that we haven't talked specifically about today that may be very applicable to your project. And quite frankly, mileage varies by user on what tools you use. And really, again, Yellow Belt's only 5 tools. It's really not a lot of tools. You're only required to use 5, but there may be a point where I may recommend, it's not required, I may recommend, hey, you've done these 5 already, but you really would be, it really would beef up your project to have, you know, maybe this one extra thing. And again, I'll help you with all of that. All right. I want to talk about what success is defined as for this when you measure. And again, and I sound like a broken record with all this, beating this down, but really you need to define at the very beginning, again, talking about the scope of your project. You and your team or whomever you're working with, excuse me, you defined success. Maybe changing things 10% is considered success for you. Maybe you want to not change things 10%. Maybe you want to go up 90% or whatever it is that you're changing. I may have mentioned before, when I did my initial Six Sigma training way back in the day, in the year 2000, I was in an atmosphere because the company I worked for at the time, which was iOmega, which was cutting edge technology back in the day, and I don't believe they exist anymore. All of the executives for that company, which were not, I'm working in Utah, but they were not in Utah. They were all former GE execs as well. And of course, GE being heavily into Six Sigma, these guys were all black belts. And I'll be honest, it's very unusual to find people at that high executive level being black belts, that many of them being black belts, being very, very aggressive about what they wanted to do and training everyone. They brought everyone in, sales, operations, everyone at all different levels to come in and train with this because it was very important for them. One thing they made with this, and again, this is about defining success, you will hear the phrase a lot of times, just let's take care of the low-hanging fruit first. And in that particular environment, I was told more than once, there is no such thing as low-hanging fruit, not when you can pick up and shake the whole tree. So it was be very aggressive, get out there, look for something. If you can find it, do that. If you need help, ask for it. And in doing that, I'll be honest, once you do one of these projects, you'll find that it's, quite frankly, it's very empowering. And by empowering, I mean, you've shown what you can do. You've shown that you can do this. You've shown your skills. And quite frankly, folks say, well, gosh, you can do this. Well, great. What else can you do? Which is not to say, oh, great, I've given myself more work. Not necessarily. It's exciting when you make things better, quite frankly. And I have had several people recently make that comment to me that they really like being able to do that. So again, talking again about that whole DMAIC thing, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So we talked about measuring, and that is so important. Get in, dig in, analyze, that's a part of it. There's tools specific for measuring. Certainly the initial tools for measuring is, well, defining, certainly, but for the measure piece, it's just understanding what are you measuring. Certainly measure it, but make sure you know what you're doing. Get in and then pick it apart. What does it mean? Is this good? Is this the best we can do? How much higher can we go? What else can we do? And again, back to those 3 questions I ask frequently, which is what's working well, Where are our challenges? And then that third question, which I promise is very helpful. If you had that magic wand in the business world and you could change anything, what would you do? So, geez, if I had an unlimited budget, unlimited time, unlimited whatever, what could I change? What could we do with this? Okay, if we can't get there, can we get somewhere in between, in the middle? Ask those questions. So really, when you do things like that and talk with different people about your project, asking those questions, and I cannot repeat myself enough when I say question everything, question me, question your manager, question your peers, question the employees you work for, which, and of course, negotiate with them as well. It's not just asking questions just to be a pain, right? But get in there, do that, ask the questions, get their feedback. Ask feedback of people that maybe necessarily haven't been checked in with. If you're working a project that affects how we work with employees, check in with an employer too. Say, hey, I'm working on a project and I'd like your feedback on something. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Ask them as well, get their point of view as well. So that, again, you're getting that voice of the customer, right? So you wanted to get in there when you do your analysis and do all of that. And then, of course, in the process of improving things, ideally, that needle's always moving up. You're going to go through, you're going to make your changes, check in with your changes. If you've, depending on the type of project you're doing, if you're doing something that's relatively small incremental changes, fantastic. If you're doing something that's perhaps more aggressive, which is fantastic, check in along the way as well as you make those improvements. And again, check in with the voice of the customer, which is not to say you've got to check in with someone every day and say, hey, and we're here now, now we're here, now we're here, now we're here. Again, you make that determination of what makes the most sense. And then, of course, ask them as well. They may say, I'm good, just touch base with me towards the end. Or someone may say, no, I do want to hear more on a more detailed basis. Okay, and today I get to talk about the control piece. Control is so important. So, I mean, incredibly important. If you don't have controls in place, like I've mentioned before, all that work that you've done, quite frankly, can fizzle. And I do not know if I mentioned this to you all, and well, I will not unmute y'all actually. So, but let me pop into this anyway. Sustainability is so important. If, again, why go through the effort of working a project, taking care of something? I'll be truthful. I've been there, done that, even with controls in place, particularly when someone else you do work a project and you hand it off to a new team, whomever, new manager for that project. And they take it and say, great, I'll run with it. And then somewhere along the line, someone drops the ball with that control piece. And then it's a little demoralizing, I'll be honest with you, which is why I cannot stress to you enough taking care of that sustainability piece, because again, that whole domain that we're working, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, you got to dig in, you've got to work it, and really get in and define. All right. So we can get this to change. And so, yeah, I've talked a little bit about sustainability, right? Part of the different factors for sustainability, these are here, and these are not necessarily what you think. Social is not like, oh, you know, my friends, whatever. Social really is, are the folks around you, are they going to be willing to help sustain those changes? Environmental, again, environmental in this case, this is a business environmental, so this is not, you know, the birds and the trees. This is the environment one that is conducive to having change, and which, of course, do your due diligence. I'm happy to help along the way to, again, remember, talk about myself as a professional pest for a reason. But the environmental is, are people ready for this? If they're not ready, what groundwork can you do? What can you do to help them? If for those who may be nervous, talk them off that ledge, help them. For those who may be resistant for whatever, or even just understanding why someone may be resistant to change. And I'm gonna actually stop and unpause y'all because I wanna get some feedback in here. Can anyone give me ideas of why people may be resistant to change?
It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because people get comfortable in their ways.
Yeah. And have any of you worked with anything where people are resistant to change?
Yeah,
Yes.
Happens all the time, right?
every day.
And what do you do when you encounter that? And especially, have you ever been responsible? Like, quite frankly, if you're working certifying for a project, you're responsible for that project. You're that project manager. How, let's talk about ways to deal with people when they are resistant. And sometimes resistance looks different, right? There's some people are like, nah, I don't want to do this. But then there are people who are like, yeah, that sounds great. That's a really good idea. I'll get back to you. And then you never hear from them. How do you deal with that?
Communication.
Suggestions, hunt them down.
Yeah.
No suggestions, huh? Okay.
It's important for them to kind of understand
Right.
context different and helping them kind of get a better understanding.
Right. And I may repeat myself, and again, sorry, you get what you get, right? But I'm going to mute y'all again. Again, I worked with a group that had some people who were, quite frankly, they were terrified. Some changes were coming. A couple of people thought they were going to be laid off. Oh, they're making all these changes and improvements, so they don't need as many of us, which was not the case. Or someone's like, well, I've done what I've done for so many years. I've been, one lady had been there over 20 years with the company over 20 years. And she's like, I'm not going to know how to do my job anymore. And one lady, again, and I think I've mentioned her before, she was maybe a year or two from retiring. And she's like, maybe I'll just retire early. I can't do this. I've changed and all these changes. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. I can't do this. And that lady in particular, I had overheard that she was really considering turning in her resignation and retiring early. And God, this lady knows so much and has so much experience. I mean, if someone wants to retire, great, but someone wanting to retire out of fear of the workplace, I want to help alleviate those fears. Quite frankly, what I did is I sat down next to her. I said, "Hey, I got screenshots of what the new systems and all this, because it was a system upgrade. That's what she was afraid of, dealing with Oracle. And it was this big, massive, multi-million-dollar system upgrade for where they were working. But this lady was terrified. And I'm not going to know how to do my job. I'm not going to know where to go. I'm not going to know how to navigate." I took screenshots of what the new software looked like and showed her, and we walked through it step by step. Well, tell me what you do. Okay, well, where would you go now? Where do we have go? Because I had a beta version, so we could kind of navigate. There was no information in there, but you could at least navigate through the system. And we did that. And I'll be honest, within 10 minutes, this lady's like, all right, well, yeah, it does look different, but it's still familiar. And I can do this. And she went from, I had one lady tell me that this lady was in the women's restroom crying because she was so nervous about this, to the point where she's like, all right, yeah, I can do this. As well as some people who are just absolutely throw their arms, fold their arms, you can't see me, fold their arms and just look at me like, I dare you to bring this change. I'm not going to do this. And again, it's a helping people understand their value first and foremost, the value of the process, the value of the improvements, and how it's going to help their world. So again, you talked briefly about emotional intelligence. Working a project, certainly it's the actual pieces that do make and all this, but so much of this is negotiating with people. And of course, some of you who work in sales, you know that very well, right? I'm preaching to the choir in the case of working with you. But again, yeah, get in and negotiate with folks and do all of this. I have this, I put the slide in and I talk about this every time I teach this class. And I think I mentioned before, and some of you already know, I was actually, well, let me start first. I was in Senegal in January, but this is a pump. This is just a Google photo. I Googled the photo of a pump, and this is not the exact kind of pump that I was working with back in the day, but I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, which is in West Africa. One of the things, I was a project manager then, although that was not my title. I didn't realize I was a project manager then, but that's what I was. And I went into, whenever I would go into places to want to work, one thing I would try to avoid is when I could see, quite frankly, failed projects before me, because it sets up expectations, and I want to make sure that any expectations when I walk through the door are real, and that I'm putting in something that's sustainable. Because as Peace Corps volunteers, we don't bring in big fancy machines and all this thing. It's about training, and it's about teaching people things. And it's not about teaching someone, like I'll give the example, because I was working with farmers and things like that, and I had a family member say to me, are you going to go teach farmers how to farm? Well, of course not. I'm going to help farmers and their families be more organized in all the different projects that they did, and that's what I was there for, was for organization. So back to the pump. I walked into a village one day, or came into a village one day, and a big governmental nonprofit organization had come in, 5, 6, 7 years before, several years before, and they'd come in and said, oh, we know what you need. You guys are pulling your water from wells, and geez, that's horrible. This whole region, everyone's pulling their water from wells. We know what you need. Y'all need pumps. And people are like, yeah, we need pumps. That sounds good. We need pumps. All right. Well, we're going to come in and we give pumps, and we're going to put a pump for this town, this town, this town, this town, right? And it would be a party. They would come in. They'd give like the kids soccer balls or whatever, and have this big party. Bring in candy, blah blah blah. Do the wells, all this stuff, or the pumps, and then they go, and it's great. People close up the wells. Didn't need them anymore. They'd have these fantastic pumps. Well, here comes Shauna, 5, 6, 7 years later, pumps aren't working because over time they've broken or something's happened, they're not functioning. And these big organizations that have come in and said, we know what you need, let me solve a problem for you, solved the problem, but they didn't give them the skills and to say, I've given you this piece of equipment, and quite frankly, they were more complicated than this one. Give them the tools to be able to, and knowledge to be able to fix something should it break. And quite frankly, even if something broke and they had the tools to fix it, they were given such expensive equipment and machinery, they wouldn't have the funds to be able to replace it. So those old pumps are still there, and here comes Shauna walking in, pump's still there, but the wells are back opened up again. Ladies are there pulling water out of the well and doing laundry nearby, and pumps were still being in use, but what they're being used for? They were being used so people could hang their laundry on them. So quite frankly, that's just an absolute classic example of, as well-meaning as it may have been, a project that had all these different steps. I don't know that they necessarily had voices of the customer technically, and it definitely had no sustainability to it, no controls put in place. I was actually back in Senegal. I go back every few years when I can. I was back in Senegal in January working there. I volunteered there for USAID, which is a United States government organization that provides aid. It was a project for them working with small business owners there. And we talked about Lean Six Sigma and all of these things. And we talked about sustainability And again, when you speak with the folks you're working with, the point of all of this is, oh my gosh, you got to talk about not just for you yourself as you're working your project, but you need to talk about sustainability with the people you're working with. And if someone says, let's do that, that's great. How are we going to maintain it? How are we going to keep this going so that, you know, this continues to maintain at the point we want it to, or even keep increasing if possible. So have those conversations, talk about them. You know, when you talk about that whole DMAIC thing, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, that control piece is so darn important. All right, I think I beat that one to death. So with savings, let me talk about calculating the savings. When you calculate savings on a project, of course, talking about certifying with a yellow belt's $10,000, certifying worth of savings, and certifying green belt is $30,000 worth of savings. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you're talking about that, there's 3 different types of savings. Again, like this says, top line, hard savings, and soft savings. So let's hop on into this. So hard savings are just that actual dollar saved. We don't do this anymore, and so we're not spending $1,000 a week or $1,000 a month or whatever it is. We're not doing something anymore. That's hard savings. You know, was able to, you know, reassign people. We just increased efficiencies, things like that, right? So, and soft savings are doing things where you're not doing anything anymore. So you're increasing productivity, you're increasing efficiencies. Those are soft savings. So not doing anything anymore versus increasing efficiencies and things like that. And again, this whole slide deck I will send out to you all later. And then top line value doesn't happen a lot with a lot of projects, although there are some that have it. It's probably, I think the data says generally 10% of projects have top line savings. And that's where you've created a project where it actually ends up generating income. So by making this change, it's actually bringing money in as opposed to making savings. That happens occasionally, not a whole lot, and gosh, fantastic if you happen to be one of those projects that do that. Those are always super popular. Okay, I'm gonna unmute y'all for a moment again. Are any of you familiar with just a plain A3 size piece of paper? Because when I say start with an A3 is a form used in Lean Six Sigma. It's used in Six Sigma, it's used in Lean, it's used in Lean Six Sigma, and it is just, it's named after the size paper. A3 is the size of a paper, which is a little bit longer than a standard piece of paper. For anyone who may be familiar, copy machines, all that stuff usually have an A3 setting, so you've got that longer piece of paper, which is not to say that you're using a different size piece of paper, but that's just what it's named from. What an A3 is a dashboard. It's a basic, I did provide you all, after we're done, finish up today, I'm going to resend out, I'll send out the slide deck, I'll send out the Excel spreadsheet I sent previously, and there's a lot of tabs in that spreadsheet, and what's in there are templates for all of these different tools, for a lot of these different tools. Feel free to use them, or if you check with your buddy Google and he shows you one that you like better, feel free to use that. If you want to tweak it, add your name, change the colors, throw in a logo, whatever you want to do, make it your own. Or you want to just use it as it is, that's great too. But an A3 really is a form of a dashboard. And when you'll pull it up, you'll see that it asks basic question: who's in charge of the project? That would be you, because you're the project manager for that project. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the business case you're trying to solve? They're prompts, right? For you to be able to fill in. Who are the team members? Who should I be contacting? Who do I need to contact? Then afterwards, it starts asking things as well, like what tools should I be using? that's the first thing I want you to do, is to start with your A3. For those of you who are going to do a project, pull up the A3 template and start filling it out. Now, there may be some spots you can't fill out yet because you don't know, and that's fine. And with all of these forms and all of these different templates, they're all flexible. They're, you know, they're spreadsheets, right? Spreadsheets, templates, all these different things, Word docs. They're flexible. Change them as you need them. You may fill it out today when we're done with this class, and then 2 weeks later you look at it again and go, oh well, no, that's not right. We'll change it. No big deal, right? So make it flexible. Have it be what you want it to be. And then of course you can touch base afterwards and verify it towards the end when you're getting ready to certify. You can go back and, you know, dot your I's, cross your T's, so to speak. So next steps for this are, again, start with your A3 would be the first thing. Then I would work on a project charter next. We talked about that project charter, which once you filled out your A3 or the basics, the basic bones of your A3, project charters just fill in the blank. Because again, what are you trying to solve? What's your business case? What's the scope? How big or how small is this going to be? That's scope. Who are my team members? Who is my customer? Things like that. Those are really easy to do, as well as what's the timeline? How long do I expect this to take? And again, you may not know for sure. Project Charter, just like in A3, is something that is flexible. Fill it out, and you know, if you need to change it later, not a problem. So again, go ahead and identify and start that project. By starting your project, just starting out, filling out the A3, making sure your champion, identify your champion as well. Make sure your champion is aware of, this is my project, and ask them too, how often would you like me to check in with you? And they may say, I want to know every step, or I just give me the high points. So again, let them know. And then start using tools appropriate to your project. And I'll stop there just really briefly, because I want to know, when I say use tools appropriate to your project, how are you going to know what tools to use? If you're going to certify and say if you're going to certify with domain, how are you going to know which one to use?
It depends too on, like, it is relevant to the project that you're working on and the company that you're, I guess, working the projects for.
Absolutely. And I'll say this too, if you're not sure, ask me. I actually just got an email yesterday from a gentleman who went through the last class, which was an in-person class, and this was a client. And he said, okay, so I defined my project. I know what I want to do. This is where I'm going to go. I'm not really sure where to go next. What do you suggest? So we had a call and we talked about it, and now he's moving on with that. And it's like, great. So he's working on all of that, and when he needs help again, he can touch base with me. And again, when you work your project, I will help you as much or as little as you choose to have me help. So that is very much driven by you. And again, I will not chase you all down and say, hey, how's that project going? What do you need? Can I do something for you? I'm telling you right now, I'm at your disposal. You got me for 6 months, as far as, well, some of you have me longer than that, probably. But you've got me for 6 months for the purposes of certifying. So if that's weekly, because that's what you need, we can do that. If it's more often than that, if it's, hey, I just want to touch, I think I got this, I'll just touch base when I need you. That's fine too. But again, check in with your project, and I will be asking to, if you do check in with me, I will ask questions like, have you checked in with your stakeholders? Are your customers aware of what you're doing? Did you define them? And all of those things. All right. So again, yellow belts, for certification for your yellow belt, this is what that, again, a reminder is. You need a minimum of one tool for each of the DMAIC steps. So again, one tool for define, one for measure, one for analyze, one for improve, one for control. And A3 is a tool. Your A3 by nature helps define your project. your A3 can count as that initial first tool. And the only tool I actually require that you all do is an A3. So quite frankly, of the 5 tools required, one's already knocked out for you, right? Because that's just filling it in. I recommend that your control piece should be either an SOP or it should be some sort of audit process that you put in place. So instructions on how to do the project process and who's responsible for checking in, or here's the actual audit process, something along those lines. And again, mileage varies by user based on what your project is and what makes sense. And then again, once you go through all of those things, you've done your tools, we've calculated your savings, and I'm happy to help you calculate your savings as well, because like I've mentioned before, I'm very good about eking out every penny possible. Then we'll get up to $10,000 in or more in savings. Then we'll do something which is a readout, which is a presentation basically, where you're going to present, and you and I will touch base first just to verify, yep, you got everything in place, you're ready to go. Arrange your presentation, and people that need to be involved would be your stakeholders, and you determine who those people are so you can read them out or present to them. Then after they answer, you can answer any questions they may have. Once those are resolved, you know, and sometimes, you know, if you've got a great presentation, and again, these presentations can be 20 minutes, they can be whatever the amount of time it takes. I mean, usually not more, definitely not more than an hour at that, and that would be actually quite a long presentation. Because once you've been working this, I mean, you're an absolute expert in this process, right? So you can be able to talk about it, explain what you've done, maybe show an example or two of the tools you've done, why you've chosen to do what you've done, show the improvements, show the beginning data, the end data, talk about the process, talk about your end numbers, and you know, that's your ta-da, right? Here y'all go on your silver platter. This is what I've done for you. They can ask their questions. You can answer any questions they may have, resolve any issues if they have any issues, and then we'll get you certified. You'll get that certification, which is cool. Then green belt, similar, only instead minimum of 3 tools per DMAIC, and again, that's still really easy to do. 3 tools per DMAIC, $30,000 in savings, and again, I am really good at eking out savings on all of this. And again, same thing, doing a readout, which again is that presentation, making sure that people, everyone involved have that, and the controls are set in place. And then and again, like I mentioned before, when you're done with your project and you've certified, again, you may be the one to help continue that process depending on who owns that process, or it may be someone else on your team or someone else in even a different group or department, right? So it's not necessarily you. Again, that's a determination you make with you. That's you, your champion, your manager can make that decision. And I'm happy to help with any of that as well. So, deadline to certify. You have 6 months from today, which technically is a Sunday, so I bumped it to 6 months and 1 day. So Monday, November 1st is the deadline to certify. So, and COB, close of business, Monday, November 1st is your last day to certify. Between today and that November 1st, have any questions, you need me for anything, hey, I'm not sure what, that's great, that looked all great, but now I'm looking at blank form and I don't know what to do. Well, let's hop in. Or hey, I need another tool and I'm not sure which one to use. I'll hop in and help. So you got me for 6 months.
So what happens if you don't certify within those 6 months?
You can have a conversation with me and say, I didn't get done. Depending on why you didn't get, did you not get done because you got busy and you just put it in the back and you figure, well, I know she'll extend the thing? Man, the answer may be no. It depends. If it's the 6 months, hey, this whole process, I need longer than 6 months to to certify, because what I'm measuring is something that I want to show the change from year to year. So I need longer to be able to show those changes. We can have that conversation. So it's an individual conversation with me and your manager to determine whether or not that makes sense. I don't recommend going beyond the 6 months because, quite frankly, most people tend to lose steam, and they end up just not certifying. We have a couple folks in SMART who went through the very, very first class that I taught for you all, and they haven't certified. One thing I will do for our internal folks, the first person from this class who certifies, I will give a $100 bonus to. And well, probably be a gift card, but Visa gift card. But along those lines, $100 gift card is the least of the quote unquote bonus that anyone gets from this, because I cannot repeat enough. You want this certification on your resume. It is so value. It increases your value. It increases, quite frankly, it increases your level of skill. You function at a different level. If you go through the process of certification, it's like the difference between having a bachelor's degree and not having a bachelor's degree. It's like having an OSHA 30 or not having an OSHA 30. When you walk through the door, there's just an expectation of, oh, this is someone who's got that additional detail. All right. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to unmute everybody. I want to know, do you have any questions?
Right now, sure we will when we get started more on it.
Right. And again, start with that A3, pull it up, and just take a look and flip through the tabs. That Excel spreadsheet, just each tab is a different tool. There is, at the beginning, a summary with the DMAIC, and it shows you examples of different tools that you can use for each of the DMAIC steps. So that's there for you. But again, I'm happy to ask questions. And I will say, the only bad question is the one you don't ask. Ask lots of questions, and if I've not beat it to death already, question everything, including questioning me. If you don't like it, if you don't understand an answer, even if you don't like an answer you're getting from me, I'm fine with you asking me a question. Why are we doing it like that? Pull out your 5 whys. That's good. Honestly, I love that. All right. No other questions?
I think so.
All right. Well, I will wrap this up. We'll be done then. I'll wrap this up. I'll let y'all go since y'all didn't really have any questions. I will send you a follow-up email with a couple things, with a reminder of the dates, reminder of the requirements. I will send a copy again of the Excel templates with all the different, the spreadsheet with all the different templates on it. And I will send you a copy of this entire slide deck for all 6 sessions. I will also send you a YouTube link that gives you because all of these sessions have been recorded, and I've been loading them each up to the Smart University YouTube channel. I will send you all a link to those as well, so you can go back, refresh, or share with anyone that you need to share with internally. Please don't share them externally, is my request. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Shaw.
All right, thank you all. Have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.